This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Hello, everyone. My name is Gerard Robinson, and welcome back to another one-on-one conversation for our In Character podcast. I have Kimberly with me from Louisiana. She was part of a group conversation where we talked about the great things that people are doing at the state level and otherwise to influence culture. As you know, we bring people back for a one-on-one conversation to do either A, do a deeper dive on something they said during the call, or B, to update us about some things that have taken place since then. So Kimberly, welcome back and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Well, thank you so much. It's really great to be back and always awesome to be able to share any of the work that's going on in Louisiana. I don't get an opportunity to talk very often about the nitty gritty of what my actual job is. And so that's a really exciting place. So are you ready to start? There's two things that I'd really like to share with you.
Great.
Nice. Okay. So the scope of my actual day job, right? So I direct educator development. And that has taken such an exciting turn. And it's because a lot of what I carried before I made it to the department are things that matter so much, like statewide. It mattered for me. It matters for the teachers that I still support. So one critical area that we're really looking into right now is the way that we actually develop new teachers and the way we actually look in terms of how are we diversifying our pipeline, and what does that have to do with culture? What type of culture has to exist for teachers to feel like a school is really theirs, like it's their presence matters and their presence makes it better. So we've been doing a lot of work around focus groups and actually talking directly to new teachers, not through proxy of someone else and letting them tell their own story. And I think that's a critical space because there's no one of us that can speak for the entirety of a culture. And I think that whenever we say that word, the richness of the thousands of new teachers that we hire each year, for them to be able to actually weigh in into the spaces that matter for them and the spaces where they feel most welcome and the spaces where they don't. I think that's really critical, really powerful work. Through that, there's another piece that we're also incredibly excited about. So one of our state priorities, of course, is, how are we looking to diversify our pipeline, right? But I also realized that whenever I came aboard, that it's very difficult to have any conversations about diversity in silos. And we tend to do that in education quite a bit. So I also recognize that we would need a lot of attention paid to how we create culturally responsive, sustainable spaces to begin with. And that's a really, really powerful conversation. And so another major piece of work that we're rolling out right now is, as a department, really trying to understand and identify and define what these pieces mean for us as a department. And then from that, we're working to build structures where we can take teachers across the state and bring them in and help us with that. What does a field that is culturally responsive and learner ready need? What does guidance for that look like? And then who should be the ones driving that? If it's a tool for teachers in a classroom, it's really critical that it's their voice that kind of drives those discussions. So that work is kicking off in the summer. And again, so, two very different pieces, I think, but I think we're doing a very good job of realizing that it's time to bring all the pieces together because, it's only a puzzle if nobody knows where to look and nobody knows what the picture makes, but we do know what it makes. It makes really great outcomes for kids and the sustainable workforce whenever we get it right. So really excited. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to ask me to talk a little bit more about my work.
Great job. So when you talk about young teachers, we know from research that a number of them leave within the first 6 years, some of them sooner. And you're saying, you know what, let's get ahead of this. And let's talk to them now. What was the aha moment, either for you or for leadership in the department, to say, let's start talking to teachers, new teachers now?
Oh, that's an awesome question. So the work for this has really shifted a few times because whenever we first started last summer, the first iteration is, okay, we're going to find out what districts have a really great new teacher induction, right? And we realized that way more than half the state identify supports that they've got in place in a really structured new teacher induction. There started to be a little bit of a disconnect, and some of it is because of COVID, and we know that, but a little bit of a disconnect because if someone is describing their program or its efficacy, what are we gauging its effectiveness by? Is it student data? Is it teacher data? Is it teacher happiness data? So we realized that we had to take a step back because you can have someone who is actually producing great results for kids and doesn't want to stay in the profession. So we couldn't crouch everything under the lens of student achievement. That's a really important indicator for how effective we are, but it's not a really important indicator for how happy we are and how prepared we are to cope, and if we feel like we belong and if we make our space better. So we just took so many steps back. And I was able to combine a lot of work that I still do within my school district that I worked in before I went to the department level, and having these conversations and just blown away. And I think that so often others speak for the ones we really need to hear. And it was just really powerful and refreshing to take a space with that sample set and then to make it a little bit bigger and pull in more voices around the state. And what we learned from them was exciting. They have a lot to contribute and add. They want to feel valued. They want to be sustaining on their own. Like, they don't want to need help forever and ever and ever, but sometimes they feel like they don't even know what to ask, right? And they also sort of called out that for a really established teacher, if we're not in a space where we're consciously competent, we're not able to help them in ways that are really effective if we can't put ourselves back in that space where they first started. So they also touched so much to mental health in ways that I thank COVID for bringing so much of that out. But even before COVID, we don't even speak of so many things about being a teacher. Like, there was this one particular teacher and she called it out. It was real talk. She was like, nobody really prepared me for how to get my life together in a day. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, tell me a little bit more about that. And she's like, well, when I grew up, I never saw a fight. I've never been in a fight. And now, on duty, I might absolutely have to break up a fight and then like shake it off and then go back and teach. And it rattles me. That's what she said. And I just thought about that, like all the gears you have to shift, or if a student discloses something very personal and very painful to you, or if you get in trouble, or if you had a bad evaluation and then you witnessed a fight and then there's an argument in your class, that's a lot of like mental toll. And so we're just finding out some really exciting things, and we're naming and labeling it better. And I think that with that information, we are going to drive every move of shifting that type of culture, that no, we don't have to actually suck it up. We can talk about these things. And now that we know it's a problem, we can apply solutions that make the job better for our teachers, the ones that are doing this incredibly hard, very powerful work.
You bring up some really good points. One being highly qualified, effective teachers who are getting great results for students still may want to leave the classroom.
Yeah.
And we often don't talk about that. Mental health. That's something that's real. As you mentioned, COVID in some ways exposed it to ways that more people from a policy perspective may want to be interested. And then third, to the aspect about what teachers bring to the classroom. They bring their class, they bring their heritage, they bring their lived experiences, which may differ from someone who's now in that class. You're like, how do I work with this? That's the realness of it. If I gave you a magic wand right now and said of what you've shared today, what's the most immediate thing people like me and others who want to help you and your department get to the next level, what can we do for you?
So funny. Because whenever I think about like teachers, I'm like, I don't need magic. I just need a classroom. And I think, but whenever I think about that, I think that conversations like this are important. Okay. And just like the steps that we're taking in Louisiana to actually take the time to listen. And whenever we're not asking the right questions, like realize that there's a better one to ask. And I think that that's a critical thing too. And then once we get the answers, be prepared to act on them. So that it's not like, okay, we had that focus group, check. We had that nice convo, good talk, go team. Like we actually have to be prepared. Otherwise, it's not worth wasting the time of someone to share their expertise and their lived and professional experience with us. So I think that that's important, asking the right questions. And when we get answers, actually be prepared to answer them and help find solutions, not the solutions that we think might be the best, but the solutions that will actually apply to the problems at hand as vocalized by people actually doing this work in the deepest levels.
For the Louisiana Department of Education, I've known some of your state chiefs, I've known some of your school board members. I know they were committed to the idea of transparency and accountability. What you're talking about right now for teachers, as a researcher, is there a database at the department where I can go in and maybe get access to, I guess redacted though, with names, but access to what some of the teachers said if I wanted to do further analysis on what you said or to share with, what we're doing here in Virginia, maybe some things we can do differently. How does that work?
That's super neat. And the short answer is yes. So I've got pages of anecdotal things that I've written, but we also are working a lot in partnership with Hanover. And they're taking some of the heavier lifts of actually reaching out to teachers and organizing more extensive focus groups. And I think that we're going to have some pretty insightful findings from Hanover pretty soon. And I would love to share that with you.
Hanover, Louisiana, or out-based organization? Is it in?
I think out-based.
Yeah, I know which group you're talking about now. Well, the reason I raise this is because we have a number of researchers who are going to watch this, and we are always interested in, would love to do a deeper dive. So good to know that. Well, any closing thoughts you want to share with us about what we should be thinking about maybe in the next 30 days about education and conversations about reopening and all that good stuff?
Oh my gosh. Well, Louisiana, we've been open since August. So barring right now, my little's, her quarantine. I think that an interesting space to look to, and it fascinates me, is the parallels between our field and other fields, and how other fields that handle trauma or handle really intense situations. How are they prepared? How are they kind of nourished and enriched? How are they continually developed and aided? And I think that we're going to look at how woefully ignored these areas are for teachers. And I say this as someone who entered the field from social work, knowing just how much support that I got and training on, like, how do you handle this? How do you handle this? What do you do if this happens? Because with teaching, it's like the truest social work. And we are well prepared for the academic side. But we also still have to teach through so much that our kids carry. And so I really am interested to see, how do like emergency room doctors get support whenever, they have trauma? How do social workers continue ongoing things? Like just all these other fields, because we're not the only ones doing this work. I think it's time that we recognize the similarities in true helping professions and start to look at what's working in other fields and apply that to the protection and the support that we offer for our teachers.
Great point. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on your wisdom and your ideas. For raising some really good points that make us go, I hadn't thought about that. And as someone, I was raised in Los Angeles, California, but born in Lake Charles. So it's always good to conversation with folks who are in the Pelican state. I have that Pelican on my birth certificate. So keep up the good work, and we look forward to supporting your work from In Character, the work that we do here at the Foundation for Advanced Studies in Culture and the Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture at the University of Virginia. So take care.
Thank you so much.